The bar fell silent, as the Marine Colonel's challenge hung in the air. He'd been mocking her all night, this quiet woman at the end of the bar who carried herself like someone who'd seen combat. "So what was your call sign?" he demanded loudly, certain he was exposing an imposter. Her voice was soft but clear enough that everyone heard her answer. "Phantom 7. The effect was immediate. The Colonel's glass slipped in hand, whiskey splashing as his face drained of color. Veterans throughout the bar straightened instinctively, some even standing at attention. In that moment, everyone realized he'd been taunting the wrong person. From which city in the world are you watching this video today? If you appreciate stories about unsung heroes and the weight they carry, please consider subscribing. We tell their stories with the respect they deserve. The bar fell silent, as the Marine Colonel's challenge hung in the air. He'd been mocking her all night, this quiet woman at the end of the bar who carried herself like someone who'd seen combat. "So what was your call sign?" he demanded loudly, certain he was exposing an imposter. Her voice was soft but clear enough that everyone heard her answer. "Phantom 7. The effect was immediate. Colonel Abernathy Mercer's glass slipped in his hand, whiskey splashing as his face drained of color. Veterans throughout the bar straightened instinctively, some even standing at attention. In that moment, everyone realized he'd been taunting the wrong person. The heavy oak door of Holbeck's had swung open 2 hours earlier, bringing a brief rush of cool night air into the warmth of the veterans' bar. Larissa Vaughan paused in the doorway, her eyes methodically scanning the room, noting exits, counting patrons, assessing threats. It was an unconscious habit, like breathing. Holbeck's was packed tonight. A group of newly commissioned officers occupied the center tables, their voices carrying an enthusiasm that only the untested could maintain. Their pressed uniforms contrasted sharply with the worn clothing of the bar's regular patrons. Larissa moved to the far end of the bar, selecting a seat that gave her clear sightlines to both entrances and the back hallway. Her movements were fluid but precise, economical in a way that spoke of thousands of hours of training. "Evening, Larissa." Zephyr acknowledged her with a subtle nod. The bartender's left sleeve was pinned neatly at the wrist, a permanent reminder of an IED outside Fallujah. "The usual?" She nodded once. Zephyr placed a neat whiskey before her, without further conversation, understanding her preference for silence. At the center of the bar, Colonel Mercer held court, his silver hair catching the dim light as he regaled his audience of junior officers with tales from his deployments. His ribbon rack told an impressive story, though Larissa noticed he wore it on his civilian blazer, an unusual choice that spoke volumes about his need for recognition. "And that's when I told the ambassador, 'Sir, with all due respect, my Marines aren't here to babysit diplomats.'" Mercer's booming laugh encouraged the expected chorus of appreciation from his audience. Larissa sipped her whiskey, her attention divided between her own thoughts and the subtle monitoring of the room. A lifetime of operational awareness couldn't be switched off, even here. As the night progressed, Mercer's stories grew louder, his gestures more expansive. His gaze occasionally drifted toward Larissa, noting her tactical watch, the specific wear pattern on her boots, the way she positioned herself in relation to the entrances. When she ordered a second drink, Mercer's attention fully shifted her way. He leaned toward his executive officer, Major Thaddeus Irving, but spoke loudly enough to carry. "You see that? Another civilian contractor, playing dress-up soldier. They buy the gear, learn the lingo, then charge the Pentagon consulting fees for expertise they never earned." Irving shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Several of the younger officers glanced toward Larissa, curious about the subject of the colonel's disdain. Larissa gave no indication she'd heard, though Zephyr noticed the subtle tightening of her fingers around her glass. He moved toward her, wiping the bar between them. "Ignore him," he murmured. "Third drink always turns him into an ass." Mercer's volume increased. These private military consultants waltz around secure facilities with their clearances, but half of them have never heard a shot fired in anger. The bar's atmosphere shifted Regular patrons recognized the building confrontation, and conversations quieted. Lieutenant Octavia Wren, one of the newly commissioned officers, watched with growing discomfort, her celebration forgotten as she observed the colonel's increasingly targeted comments. Mercer, irritated by Larissa's composed indifference, finally approached her directly. He positioned himself just behind her left shoulder, invading her space with deliberate intent. "You know what gives it away?" he asked loudly. "The watch, the boots, the way you're sitting right now, back to the wall, eyes on the door. You're wearing the costume, but are you the real thing?" Zephyr moved toward them. "Colonel, maybe tonight's not. I'm having a conversation with the lady." Mercer cut him off sharply. He focused again on Larissa's back. "So what's your story? Where'd you serve? What was your call sign? Or did you buy all this gear online to look the part?" The bar fell completely silent. Every eye was now on this confrontation. Larissa slowly rotated her bar stool to face Mercer, making eye contact for the first time. Her expression remained neutral, but something in her eyes, a depth of experience, perhaps caused several veterans in the room to straighten instinctively. Mercer smirked, certain he'd exposed an imposter. "No call sign? That's what I thought." The silence that followed Mercer's challenge seemed to stretch beyond the confines of time. Even the ambient sounds of the bar ice settling in glasses, the hum of the refrigeration units seemed to fade away. Larissa's voice, when she finally spoke, was surprisingly soft, yet carried through the silent room with perfect clarity. "Phantom 7. Two simple words, yet their effect was seismic. Colonel Mercer's expression transformed from smug superiority to shocked disbelief in an instant. His hand jerked involuntarily, the whiskey glass slipping between his fingers. He fumbled, barely catching it before it shattered on the floor, amber liquid sloshing over the rim onto his hand. Major Irving audibly gasped, taking an involuntary step backward as though Larissa had suddenly transformed into something dangerous. His face had drained of color. The younger officers looked confused, exchanging glances, trying to understand the significance of what had just occurred. But every veteran in the room had visibly tensed. Some straightened in their seats, others stared with new recognition. Lieutenant Wren, though unfamiliar with the reference, recognized the reactions of her superiors. Whatever Phantom 7 meant, it had fundamentally altered the power dynamic in the room. Mercer struggled to find his voice. "That's not possible." Phantom 7 was very real, Colonel, and very classified. The new voice came from a dark corner booth, where Admiral Silas Thorne had been sitting unnoticed. The elderly man rose slowly, his weathered face partially hidden in shadow. Though in civilian clothes, his bearing unmistakably marked him as a flag officer. "Admiral," Mercer acknowledged automatically, his military discipline asserting itself even through his shock. Thorne moved toward the bar with measured steps. "Colonel Mercer, I believe you've been addressing one of the most decorated operators in recent military history, though you won't find those decorations in any public record." Recognition dawned across the bar as several patrons suddenly understood exactly who Larissa was. Without being told, several veterans throughout the bar stood at attention, a gesture so instinctive it spoke volumes. Mercer's face had lost all color as he struggled to process that he'd been berating the sole publicly surviving member of the most classified operation in recent military history. An operation that officially never happened, but whose whispered legacy had created a ghost story that haunted the highest echelons of military command. Larissa remained seated, clearly uncomfortable with the recognition, but her gaze never wavered from Mercer's face. There was no triumph in her expression, no satisfaction at his humiliation, only a deep weariness that suggested she'd seen this scenario play out before. "Sir," Mercer began, addressing Admiral Thorne while struggling to regain composure, "I wasn't aware that any Phantom 7 operators were still breathing." Larissa completed his thought, her voice carrying a hint of grim humor. "Fewer than there should be." The statement hung in the air, laden with unspoken history. Whatever Phantom 7 had been, It had clearly exacted a terrible toll. Lieutenant Wren observed the subtle exchanges occurring throughout the bar, the looks of awe, the nods of profound respect. She realized she was witnessing something significant that would never appear in any training manual or military history book. Admiral Thorne's hand came to rest gently on Larissa's shoulder, a gesture of both respect and silent communication. Something passed between them, an understanding born of shared knowledge, too classified for this public setting. Colonel Mercer straightened his posture, military discipline finally overriding his shock. What happened next surprised everyone who didn't understand the true significance of that call sign. He rendered a perfect, formal salute, a profoundly meaningful gesture in civilian clothes and setting. "Ma'am, I spoke out of line and without knowledge," he said, his voice steady and formal. "I apologize for my conduct." Larissa acknowledged with a small nod, but didn't return the salute. She wasn't in uniform, and her discomfort with the formality was evident. "We're all just trying to enjoy a quiet drink, Colonel." The tension that had gripped the bar began to dissipate. Conversations slowly resumed, though significantly quieter and more respectful than before. The nature of the room had transformed. Lieutenant Wren approached cautiously, not to ask about Phantom-7. She understood enough to know better, but to quietly place a fresh drink beside Larissa with a simple, "Thank you for your service." The genuine simplicity of the gesture seemed to affect Larissa. More than Mercer's formal apology, she offered the lieutenant a rare smile. "Take care of your people, Lieutenant. That's the only thanks any of us need." As the night progressed, Larissa remained at her spot at the bar, though the space around her had changed. No one approached directly, but respect manifested in subtler ways. Drinks appeared without being ordered. Conversations included respectful nods in her direction. Veterans found reasons to pass nearby and offer quiet acknowledgments. Zephyr returned to Larissa's end of the bar, silently placing a challenge coin before her, one she recognized from an operation that officially never happened. "Been carrying this a long time," he said quietly, waiting for someone who'd understand what it cost. Larissa's fingers traced the worn edges of the coin, her eyes momentarily distant. "Too much," she finally replied. "It always costs too much." Hours later, as the bar finally emptied, Larissa settled her tab and stepped out into the rain-slicked parking lot. The night air carried the scent of approaching dawn, though the sky remained dark. Admiral Thorne waited beside a black SUV with government plates, his aged frame somehow straighter outside the confines of the bar. "It was only a matter of time, Larissa," he said without preamble. "They're eliminating Phantom-7 operators one by one." Larissa's expression revealed she had already suspected this truth. Her response was measured, professional. "Dashel, Paraguay, last month. And Elara, Geneva, last week." Made to look like a heart attack, but the timing is too convenient. Larissa nodded grimly. "I felt someone watching me yesterday. Thought I was getting paranoid." "Your instincts kept you alive this long," Thorne observed. "The Pentagon wants to bring you in protective custody." A humorless smile crossed her face. "We both know there's no protection from this, Admiral. Not even from inside." Rain fell steadily now, beating on her jacket and running down her face like tears she'd never allow herself to shed. "Then what's your play?" Thorne asked. Larissa looked back at the bar, then to the horizon where the faintest hint of gray suggested the coming dawn. "Find the remaining team, figure out who's targeting us, and do what Phantom-7 does best." "Which is?" "Become the nightmare that haunts other people's sleep." As she walked away into the darkness, she pulled a phone from her pocket and began composing a message to unseen team members. Her stride was purposeful, her shoulders set with renewed determination. Neither she nor Admiral Thorne noticed the shadowy figure watching from across the street, speaking quietly into a comm device. "Confirmed. Phantom-7 is active again." The observer's hand moved to a concealed weapon, then hesitated. "Not here. Not yet." The hunt was just beginning, and Phantom-7's lone wolf had just become the most dangerous prey of all, one that knew it was being hunted. Larissa's apartment felt foreign when she returned, as though she'd been gone for years rather than hours. The security system showed no breaches, but she conducted a thorough sweep anyway, checking every corner, every shadow, every potential hiding place. Old habits never died. They just grew more essential with time. Satisfied that she was alone, she moved to a seemingly ordinary bookshelf and pressed a sequence into the underside of the third shelf. A soft click, and a hidden compartment opened in the wall behind it. Inside lay a rugged laptop, untraceable, unregistered. It powered on silently, requesting a biometric scan that went far beyond fingerprints. When the screen finally unlocked, she typed a simple message: Ghost Protocol initiated. Dashiell and Alara confirmed down. Rendezvous at Echo Point in 72 hours. She sent it through an encrypted channel that would leave no digital footprint, then systematically erased all evidence of the communication. The laptop went back into its hiding place, the wall panel sliding shut. Larissa moved to her bedroom closet, pushing aside hanging clothes to reveal a wall safe. Inside was a passport bearing a name that wasn't hers, credentials that established an identity she'd built over years but never used, and a weapon few civilians would recognize, a modified sidearm designed for operators who couldn't afford to miss. The safe also contained a small, weathered photograph. 6 individuals, faces partially obscured by tactical gear, standing before a helicopter. The image was worn at the edges from repeated handling. Larissa allowed herself exactly 30 seconds to look at it. Then she replaced everything except the passport, credentials, and weapon. Those went into a go bag already packed and waiting beneath her bed. Always ready, always prepared. She showered quickly, mechanically, her mind already mapping contingencies and escape routes. As steam filled the bathroom, her gaze caught her reflection in the mirror. The scars across her shoulder and down her back told stories she'd never shared, the physical marks of Phantom 7's legacy. Clean and dressed in nondescript clothing suitable for travel, she settled onto her couch, weapon within reach, and closed her eyes. Not to sleep, Phantom 7 operators had been trained to function on minimal rest, but to enter a state of heightened alertness disguised as repose. Her breathing slowed while her senses remained razor-sharp. Dawn broke over the city. Larissa's phone vibrated with a message. Unknown sender, but the content confirmed its origin. Spectre and Wraith secure. Awaiting coordinates. 2 teammates confirmed alive. That left Talon unaccounted for, possibly already eliminated. She'd need to verify before the rendezvous. A knock at her door shattered her planning. 3 sharp raps, precise and measured. Military. Larissa moved silently to a position beside the door, weapon ready, and checked the peephole. Lieutenant Octavia Wren stood outside, alone and in civilian clothes. Larissa hesitated. The young officer from the bar posed no physical threat, but her presence here was concerning. No one should know this address. Larissa had been meticulous in maintaining separation between her public identity and her operational life. "I know you're in there," Wren called softly. "Admiral Thorne sent me. I'm carrying a message that can't be transmitted electronically. That tracked with protocol, but trust came difficult to someone who'd seen too many betrayals." Larissa kept her weapon ready as she opened the door a crack, chain still engaged. "The Admiral said to tell you Cairo goes dark at midnight," Wren stated calmly. "He said you'd understand the significance." The code phrase was correct. A reference to an operation from years ago that only Thorne and Phantom 7 operators would know. Larissa disengaged the chain and allowed Wren inside, shutting the door quickly behind her. The lieutenant's eyes noted the weapon in Larissa's hand, but showed no fear, only professional assessment. "I'm also supposed to give you this," Wren said, producing a small data drive from her pocket. "And to tell you that I've been assigned as your liaison. The Admiral thought you might need someone who can move freely within official channels." Larissa took the drive without touching Wren's hand. "Liaison means asset. Are you prepared for what that means, Lieutenant?" Because once you step into this shadow, there's no stepping back into the light. Wren's posture straightened, almost imperceptibly. With respect, ma'am, I made my choice when I agreed to deliver that message. Admiral Thorne briefed me on the basics, former operators being systematically eliminated, high-level clearance required, extreme risk factor. I understand what I'm signing up for. No, you don't, Larissa said firmly. But you will soon enough. She gestured to the couch. Sit. Tell me exactly what Thorne told you, word for word. As Wren recounted her briefing, Larissa's trained ear detected no inconsistencies, no tells that would suggest deception. Either the lieutenant was exactly what she appeared to be, an earnest junior officer drafted into something far beyond her experience, or she was an exceptionally skilled operative. The Admiral said one more thing, Wren concluded. He said to tell you that Talon made contact 6 hours ago. He's gone to ground in Bucharest after an attempt on his life. Relief flickered briefly across Larissa's face. Talon alive meant all surviving team members were accounted for. Now they just needed to stay that way long enough to identify who was hunting them. Why you? Larissa asked bluntly. What makes you qualified to serve as liaison to an operation you know nothing about? Wren didn't flinch under the direct questioning. My father was General Marcus Wren. The name registered immediately. General Wren had been the architect of several classified programs that pushed the boundaries of conventional warfare. He'd also died under mysterious circumstances, 3 years ago officially listed as a heart attack, though rumors suggested otherwise. He told me once, Wren continued, that if I ever encountered someone associated with Phantom-7, I should trust them with my life. He said they were the best operators this country ever produced, and that they'd been betrayed by the very people they protected. Larissa studied the lieutenant carefully. Your father knew things he shouldn't have known. That knowledge likely got him killed. I'm aware, Wren replied, her voice steady despite the implication. That's why I volunteered when Admiral Thorne mentioned Phantom-7. I want to know who was responsible. For the first time since the bar, Larissa felt something shift in her assessment of the situation. Vengeance was a motivation she understood intimately. It created reliable allies, if nothing else. The data drive, she prompted, contains the autopsy reports for Dashiell and Ilara, along with surveillance footage from both locations 48 hours prior to their deaths. The Admiral thought it might help identify the perpetrators. Larissa nodded, already formulating how to analyze the data securely. Lieutenant, I need to be clear about something. From this moment forward, you're operating without official sanction. If we're compromised, the government will disavow any knowledge of your actions. Best case scenario, your career ends. Worst case, you end up like Dashiell and Ilara. Wren met her gaze steadily. I understand, ma'am. And stop calling me ma'am. Larissa will do. We're not in a chain of command here. Understood. Larissa checked her watch. I have a flight to catch in 3 hours. You have until then to go home, pack essentials, and settle any affairs that can't wait. Tell no one where you're going or why. Use cash only from this point forward. Ditch your phone and any electronics that could be tracked. Wren nodded, already mentally cataloging what she'd need. One last thing, Larissa added, as she escorted the lieutenant to the door. If at any point you feel I've been compromised, or am not who I claim to be, you use this. She pressed a small device into Wren's hand. It's a panic button, direct line to Admiral Thorne. Once activated, assume everyone, including me, is hostile until proven otherwise. The weight of the situation finally registered in Wren's expression. Will 3 hours be enough for you to verify I'm not a threat? Larissa's smile held no warmth. I'll never be completely convinced you're not a threat, Lieutenant. That's how I've stayed alive this long. Zurich International Airport hummed with efficiency, travelers moving through the terminal with practiced ease. Larissa blended perfectly among them. Another business traveler in a sensible blazer, rolling carry-on trailing behind her. Lieutenant Wren followed 6 paces back, as instructed, maintaining separation while keeping Larissa in sight. They boarded separately, took seats in different sections of the aircraft, and made no acknowledgement of each other. The flight to Istanbul was the first leg of a deliberately complex journey designed to identify and shake any potential surveillance. 18 hours and 3 connecting flights later, they converged in a small cafe in Bucharest's Old Town. Larissa arrived first, selecting a corner table with clear sightlines to all entrances. Ren arrived 17 minutes later, ordered a coffee at the counter, and sat at a table near the window. The exchange was conducted without eye contact or direct communication. Ren left her coffee cup with a napkin tucked partially beneath it. Larissa, departing 10 minutes later, collected it as though cleaning her own table. The coordinates written in faint pencil on the underside of the napkin would direct her to the safe house where Talon waited. Navigating the narrow streets of Bucharest, Larissa maintained constant awareness, doubling back twice to confirm she wasn't being followed. The rain had started again, providing welcome cover as pedestrians hurried with heads down, umbrellas obscuring faces. The building was nondescript, weathered stone, indistinguishable from its neighbors. Larissa entered through a service door in the rear, climbing 5 flights of stairs rather than risking the elevator. At the door marked 507, she knocked in a specific pattern. The door opened to reveal a mountain of a man, bearded and scarred, eyes alert despite obvious exhaustion. Talon, though his real name was Nikolai Reznik, former Spetsnaz operator recruited by U.S. intelligence for his unparalleled skills in close-quarters combat. "Took you long enough," he rumbled, his Russian accent still detectable despite years in America. "Had to make sure I wasn't bringing company," Larissa replied, stepping into the sparse apartment. Her eyes performed a quick assessment. 2 exits, windows with clear escape routes, weapons strategically placed for quick access. Talon had prepared well. "Your new friend is clean," he said, nodding toward the street where Ren would be arriving shortly. "Had her under surveillance since she left the airport. No one following." Larissa raised an eyebrow. "You still have local assets?" "I have assets everywhere," Talon replied without elaboration. "Spectre and Wraith arrive tomorrow. Separate flights, separate routes. And security? 3 layers. Physical perimeter, electronic countermeasures, and a few surprises for unwanted visitors." He gestured to several nearly invisible tripwires connected to silent alarms. "Not as sophisticated as what we had in Tehran, but it will suffice." The mention of Tehran hung between them, heavy with unspoken history. A soft knock at the door, matching the pattern Larissa had used. Talon moved to answer it, weapon ready but concealed behind his back. Ren entered, immediately taking in the room's layout and defensive positions with an efficiency that surprised Larissa. The lieutenant's situational awareness exceeded what her limited experience should allow. "Lieutenant," Talon acknowledged with a slight nod. "Your father was a good man." Ren's composure faltered momentarily. "You knew him?" "He saved my life in Kandahar, before Phantom 7. Talon turned to Larissa. "She has his eyes. Same determination." The observation served as both assessment and approval. If Talon trusted her, that simplified matters considerably. "Show me what we know," Larissa said, moving to the table where several laptops were arranged. Each was connected to an independent power source and a proprietary encryption system designed by Spectre, the team's communications specialist. Talon brought up surveillance footage from both Dashel and Ilara's last known locations. Pattern is identical. Professional surveillance for 48 to 72 hours. Then a strike team, 4 operatives minimum. High-end equipment, military precision, government resources, Larissa observed. "But which government?" Ren asked, studying the footage. "These don't match standard U.S. tactical formations." Larissa and Talon exchanged glances, impressed by the observation. "That's the question," Larissa acknowledged. "The how is clear. The who and why remain unknown." Talon pulled up additional files. Dashel was investigating something before he died. "He sent me encrypted fragments, but nothing complete. Whatever he found, it got him killed." The fragments were displayed across one screen: partial documents, redacted intelligence reports, financial transactions routed through shell companies. What was he working on? Larissa asked. Private security contracts. Specifically, a company called Axiom Strategic. Talon pointed to recurring entries in the financial records. They've been receiving massive payments from a black budget designated only as Scimitar. Ren leaned closer to the screen. Axiom Strategic. They've got contracts throughout the Middle East and Central Asia, mostly security details for diplomats and high-value extraction operations. You're familiar with them? Larissa asked. They recruited heavily from my officer candidate school class, offered triple military salary plus combat bonuses. Several of my classmates signed on. Talon nodded grimly. They've been building an army. Highly trained, well-equipped, and completely deniable. A private military force accountable to no one, Larissa summarized. But that doesn't explain why they're targeting Phantom-7 operators specifically. I think this might, Talon said. Bringing up the final piece of data, Dashel had sent a heavily redacted mission report with a familiar operational signature. They're recreating our Tehran operation. The implication settled heavily over the room. Tehran had been Phantom-7's most controversial mission, an operation so classified that even within the intelligence community, it existed only as rumor and speculation. That's impossible, Larissa said. The protocols were destroyed, the technology was decommissioned. Apparently not, Talon replied. Dashel found evidence that Axiom has obtained the prototype and plans to deploy it. Ren looked between them, sensing the gravity but missing context. What exactly happened in Tehran? Larissa and Talon exchanged glances. A silent negotiation about how much to reveal. Tehran was a weapons test, Larissa finally said. A system designed to selectively target individuals based on genetic markers. In theory, it could eliminate specific threats without collateral damage. In practice, it was a massacre, Talon finished. The targeting parameters failed. What was supposed to be a precision strike against 3 high-value targets ended with hundreds of civilian casualties. The official record shows a gas leak caused an explosion, Larissa continued. Phantom-7 was sent in to extract the science team and destroy all evidence of U.S. involvement. We completed the mission, but the cost was too high. 2 team members didn't make it out. The rest of us were haunted by what we'd witnessed. After that, Phantom-7 was officially disbanded, Talon added. The weapon was supposedly decommissioned, all research destroyed. We were reassigned to separate posts, with the understanding that we would never discuss what happened. But someone kept the research, Ren concluded. And now they're eliminating everyone who knows the truth about what happened. A notification chimed on one of the laptops, a secure message from Spectre. Change of plans, Talon reported after reading it. Spectre and Wraith have been compromised. Extraction in progress. New rendezvous in Odessa in 36 hours. What about the Admiral? Larissa asked. Gone dark. No contact since your departure. The implications were clear. Their support network was crumbling. Someone with extensive knowledge of their protocols and safe channels was systematically cutting off their resources. We need to move, Larissa decided. This location may be compromised as well. Talon was already collecting essential equipment. I have a secondary safe house across the city. We can regroup there and plan our route to Odessa. Ren watched the 2 operators shift seamlessly into evacuation mode. Their movements synchronized despite years apart. What can I do? Contact your former classmates at Axiom, Larissa instructed. Don't ask directly about Scimitar, but see what you can learn about their current operations. Someone may let something slip, and if they realize why I'm asking, then you'll find out firsthand how good their counterintelligence training is, Talon said bluntly. Be careful. These people don't leave loose ends. They finished packing in under 4 minutes, leaving no trace of their presence. Talon led them through a service exit that connected to the adjacent building's basement, emerging 2 blocks away, where a nondescript sedan waited. Split up, he instructed. I'll take the car. You two on foot? Different routes. Rendezvous. At the secondary location in 1 hour. Larissa nodded, then turned to Ren. Stay 3 blocks behind me at all times. If I signal danger, abort immediately. And make your way to the extraction point we discussed on the plane. Understood. As they prepared to separate, Larissa felt a familiar tension, the heightened awareness that had kept her alive through countless operations. Someone was watching. Not here specifically, but the net was tightening. Talon, she said quietly. If we don't all make it to Odessa, the mission continues, he finished firmly. Whoever survives ensures that Tehran never happens again. They moved out into the rainy Bucharest evening, each taking separate paths toward an uncertain rendezvous. The hunt for Phantom 7 continued, but the hunters didn't realize an essential truth. Their quarry had never stopped being predators, and predators, when cornered, became their most dangerous. Ren followed Larissa through Bucharest's rainy streets, maintaining the prescribed distance while keeping her in sight. As she navigated the unfamiliar streets, the lieutenant reflected on how quickly her world had transformed. 3 days ago, she'd been celebrating her commission. Now she was involved in a shadow war, with stakes she was only beginning to comprehend. Her father's words echoed in her memory. Trust Phantom 7 with your life. She was doing exactly that, though not in the way he likely intended. Whatever happened next, there would be no going back to the ordered world of military protocol and clear chains of command. Ahead, Larissa turned a corner and disappeared from view. Ren counted to 30 before following, maintaining the prescribed distance. When she reached the corner, she paused, checking reflections in shop windows for signs of surveillance. What she saw instead was Larissa, stopped in the middle of the narrow street, hands raised slightly. 3 men in civilian clothes had her surrounded, their posture and positioning unmistakably professional. One held something against Larissa's side, likely a concealed weapon. Ren froze, assessing options. Intervention would likely get both of them killed. Following protocol meant retreating to the extraction point. But abandoning Larissa meant losing their best chance at understanding the conspiracy targeting Phantom 7. As she wavered, Larissa's head turned slightly. Their eyes met briefly across the distance. The message was clear. Run. Instead of running, Ren moved to a shadowed doorway, drew her concealed weapon, and observed the interaction through reflection in a shop window. Commander Vorn, the lead operative, said, his voice carrying in the quiet street. Director Kierzek sends his regards. At the name Kierzek, Larissa's expression changed recognition, then cold fury. He said you'd figure it out eventually, the operative continued, but he didn't expect you to activate the entire team. Tehran wasn't a failure, Larissa stated flatly. It was a demonstration. The operative nodded. The civilian casualties weren't a malfunction. They were the point. Axiom isn't recreating the technology, they're implementing the next phase. From her position, Ren noticed something extraordinary. The 3 operatives surrounding Larissa weren't threatening her. They were protecting her, forming a loose perimeter with their bodies between her and potential threats. Director Kierzek was Phantom 7, Larissa said, realization dawning. The 7th member, the one whose death we confirmed in Tehran. He needed to disappear to build Axiom from the shadows, the operative explained. The genetic targeting system was never decommissioned. It was perfected. Suddenly, shots rang out from a rooftop above. One of the operatives fell. The others moved to shield Larissa as return fire erupted. Ren broke cover, racing toward Larissa as more shooters appeared from multiple directions. In the chaos, Larissa pulled Ren into a narrow alley. Tehran wasn't our mission, she said urgently. We were sent to stop it, not execute it. Phantom 7 wasn't the operational team, we were the resistance. The only ones who knew the truth and tried to prevent the demonstration. Ren stared in shock as the full truth emerged. The weapon targets specific genetic markers. My father's research, your father helped us sabotage the original test, Larissa confirmed. That's why he was killed. And why Kierzek is eliminating us all. We're the only ones who can identify him as the architect of Tehran. The shooting intensified. Talon appeared at the end of the alley, providing covering fire. Kirzek doesn't just want us dead, Larissa said as they ran. He needs our genetic profiles. We're the template for the next generation targeting system. As they reached Talon's position, he handed Larissa a satellite phone. Spectre and Wraith are alive. They've found Kirzek's research facility outside Odessa. They have evidence connecting him to Tehran and the current operation. Larissa took the phone, her expression resolute. Then we end this, once and for all. 2 days later, in an abandoned warehouse outside Odessa, the surviving members of Phantom-7 gathered for the first time in 5 years. Spectre, real name Elijah Bowen, was a former NSA cryptanalyst whose talent for breaking unbreakable codes had made him invaluable to the team. His face bore a fresh scar from his recent escape. Wraith Serena Nakamura had been the team's infiltration specialist. Even now, she moved with a grace that seemed to bend shadows around her, making her presence easy to forget even when she stood directly in front of you. We have 24 hours before Kirzek realizes we've disappeared, Spectre said, typing rapidly on a custom-built terminal. The facility is locked down, tight biometric scanners, armed guards, satellite surveillance. We've been in worse situations, Talon observed, checking his weapons. Not with these stakes, Wraith countered. If Kirzek deploys the improved targeting system, he can eliminate anyone whose DNA matches specific parameters. Entire ethnic groups, political dissidents, military threats, anyone. How is that even possible, Ren asked. The logistics alone. Water supply, Larissa interrupted. It's the only delivery system with sufficient reach. The markers remain dormant until activated by a specific frequency. And then people start dying. Seemingly natural causes: heart attacks, strokes, aneurysms. No evidence, no trace. The perfect weapon. Spectre looked up from his terminal. I've got the facility schematics. There's a way in through the maintenance tunnels, but the timing has to be perfect. Security rotations every 15 minutes. What about Kirzek himself? Talon asked. Top floor, private suite, separate security detail. Larissa studied the layout. He'll be expecting us. This is what he wants all the remaining Phantom-7 operators in one place. Then let's give him what he wants, Wraith suggested. But on our terms. The plan formed quickly, years of operational experience, making verbal communication almost unnecessary. Each team member anticipated the other's thoughts, filling gaps in strategy before they were even mentioned. Ren watched in fascination as 4 people who hadn't seen each other in years functioned with the synchronized precision of a single organism. Lieutenant, Larissa said finally, you have the most important role. You'll carry the evidence directly to Admiral Thorne. I should be going with you, Ren protested. Your father built safeguards into the original system, Larissa explained. There's a reason Kirzek hasn't moved against you directly. He can't. Your genetic profile contains a signature that would trigger failsafes in the targeting system. That makes you our insurance policy. Ren looked at the encrypted drive. Spectre had prepared, containing all the evidence they'd gathered. And if none of you make it back, then you finish the mission, Talon said simply. You expose Kirzek, Tehran, all of it. That night, as the others made final preparations, Larissa found Ren sitting alone on the warehouse roof, watching the stars. Your father was a good man, Larissa said, settling beside her. He understood the cost of what we do better than most. Did he know? About Tehran? About what would happen? He knew the weapon was too dangerous to exist. That's why he built the failsafes. That's why he altered your DNA when you were still an infant, making you immune to the system, giving you the ability to disable it. He used me as a weapon, Ren said quietly. He made you a shield, Larissa corrected, for humanity. The rain had started again, gentle drops tapping against the metal roof. Neither woman moved to seek shelter. When this is over, Ren asked, what happens to Phantom-7? Larissa's eyes fixed on the distant horizon. Some ghosts never rest. But maybe they find peace. Dawn broke over Odessa, painting the sky in shades of crimson and gold. The team moved out, each taking separate routes toward the Axiom facility. Wren watched them go, then headed in the opposite direction, toward the extraction point, where a secure transport would take her to Admiral Thorne. She never made it there. 3 blocks from the warehouse, a black SUV pulled alongside her. The rear door opened, revealing Admiral Thorne himself. "Lieutenant," he said, "get in. Plans have changed." For a brief moment, Wren hesitated. Then she slid into the seat beside him. "Sir, I have evidence concerning Director Emmerich Kierzek and the Tehran incident." "I know," Thorne said gravely. "That's why we need to move quickly. Kierzek has penetrated deeper than any of us realized. The Pentagon, intelligence agencies, even my own office." The SUV moved through the streets of Odessa, eventually arriving at a private airfield, where a sleek jet waited. Wren followed the Admiral up the steps, the weight of the evidence drive heavy in her pocket. Inside, she froze. Seated in the luxurious cabin was a distinguished man in his 60s, his silver hair impeccably styled, his suit custom-tailored. "Lieutenant Wren," he said with a warm smile, "I've been looking forward to meeting you. I'm Director Kierzek." Wren's hand moved toward her weapon, but Thorne gripped her arm. "Don't. It's not what you think." "Quite right," Kierzek agreed. "Admiral Thorne has been working with me from the beginning. The operation in Tehran was sanctioned at the highest levels. What Larissa and the others don't understand is that sometimes terrible choices must be made for the greater good. 300 civilians died," Wren said through clenched teeth. "And thousands more will live because of what we learned," Kierzek countered. "The targeting system is the future of warfare. Precise, deniable, effective. No more collateral damage. No more endless wars. Except for those you choose to eliminate. Only those who pose a genuine threat to global security," Thorne interjected. "That's why we need you, Lieutenant. Your genetic profile is the key to ensuring the system can never be misused." Wren looked between the two men, her father's warnings echoing in her memory. "Trust Phantom-7 with your life." "I'd like to hear more," she said carefully. "About the safeguards, the oversight, the controls." Kierzek smiled, mistaking her apparent interest for compliance. "Of course. We have extensive protocols." His phone buzzed with an incoming message. As he glanced down, his expression changed from confidence to alarm. "What is it?" Thorne demanded. "The facility. It's been breached." Wren allowed herself a small smile. "You underestimated them." Again. The director's eyes narrowed. "You're stalling. And you're exposed," Wren replied, pulling a small device from her pocket. "This isn't just a data drive. It's been broadcasting our entire conversation to every major news outlet and intelligence agency worldwide. Phantom-7 wasn't trying to breach your facility. That was just a distraction." Kierzek lunged forward, but Wren was already moving, executing a perfect takedown sequence that Larissa had taught her during their journey. The director hit the floor hard, Thorne reaching for his sidearm, only to find Wren's weapon already trained on him. "Admiral Silas Thorne, Director Emmerich Kierzek, you are under arrest for war crimes, conspiracy, and the murders of Dashiell Rhodes and Ilara Tejada, among others." The cabin door opened behind her, revealing a full tactical team led by a grim-faced federal marshal. "We'll take it from here, Lieutenant." 2 weeks later, the heavy oak door of Holbeck swung open, bringing a brief rush of cool night air into the warmth of the veterans' bar. Larissa paused in the doorway, followed by Wren and Talon. The bar fell silent, then erupted in respectful applause as veterans recognized her. Zephyr slid a newspaper across the bar. "Axiom CEO Director Emmerich Kierzek arrested for war crimes. Classified, Terran incident evidence made public." Smaller headline, "Phantom-7 operators cleared of wrongdoing. Recognized for attempts to prevent civilian casualties." Colonel Mercer approached, humbled. "Commander Vorn, on behalf of everyone who misjudged you, Larissa stopped him with a small gesture. We all serve in different ways, Colonel. Some in the spotlight, some in shadows. Spectre and Wraith sat at a corner table, their presence acknowledged but respectfully given space by the other patrons. The team had survived against all odds. A young man in civilian clothes entered, carrying an official-looking envelope. He approached Larissa directly, offering a formal salute before handing it over. From the Secretary of Defense, ma'am. Inside was a brief note and 5 Presidential Medals of Freedom. The note read simply, "For service above and beyond, in shadows where gratitude rarely reaches." Larissa looked at the medals, then to her teammates. These belonged to all of Phantom 7, the ones who made it back, and the ones who didn't. Ren, now officially assigned as liaison to the newly formed Oversight Committee for Covert Operations, asked quietly, "What happens now?" Larissa glanced around the bar at the veterans who now looked to her with newfound respect and understanding. "Now we do what soldiers always do. We keep serving, keep protecting, even when no one knows our names." As they raised glasses in a toast to absent friends, Zephyr leaned close to Larissa. "There are whispers about similar programs in other countries. The technology is still out there." Larissa's eyes met those of her team. No words were needed, their work was not yet done. "Some battles are fought in the open," Larissa said finally. "Others need phantoms." As the night progressed, one by one, the team members departed until only Larissa remained, nursing a final whiskey at the end of the bar. Colonel Mercer, now understanding the weight of who he had challenged that night, raised his glass in a silent toast from across the room. Larissa acknowledged with the slightest nod, respecting the gesture while remaining uncomfortable with recognition. As she finally prepared to leave, a young soldier stopped her briefly at the door. "Ma'am, I just wanted to say, my sister was in Tehran. She survived because someone warned her neighborhood to evacuate. I never knew who to thank until now." Larissa nodded once, emotion briefly visible in her eyes, before disappearing into the night, a guardian returning to the shadows, where she served best. Rain fell softly outside, washing the city streets clean. Larissa walked alone, her stride purposeful, shoulders straight. In her pocket, her phone vibrated with an encrypted message from Ren. New, intelligence, Tokyo, possible Axiom connection. Without breaking stride, she typed a single response. Phantom 7 is watching. Across the city, in apartments and safe houses, 4 other phones received the same message. Within hours, they would converge again, invisible guardians against threats that would never make headlines. The rain intensified, but Larissa didn't quicken her pace. Water beaded on her jacket and ran down her face, no longer like tears she wouldn't shed, but like a baptism, washing away the past and consecrating a new purpose. In the distance, dawn approached. Another day, another mission. The weight of responsibility remained heavy, but for the first time in years, it was a burden shared. A burden that, perhaps, defined her more than it broke her.